Hi everyone, welcome to this introduction to the Top Sportsability online resource. My name is Niamh Elizabeth Morton and I'm going to guide you through what Top Sportsability is all about and then how to get onto the online resource and how to use it to its best potential. So Top Sportsability was developed to meaningfully include all young people, including those with special educational needs and disabilities, into physical education, physical activity and school sport. So generally, in terms of inclusion, we found that the term inclusion or wording around disability actually scares a lot of people, and there's a lot of fear around that. And that's not because people don't want to include, it's because they don't feel they maybe have the skills or the tools to be able to include. And hopefully this Top Sportsability resource is going to enable you to be a more inclusive practitioner in whatever practitioner role you have within a school in terms of including children with PE and school sport. So with inclusion, if people are confused around what to do with inclusion, I always believe that a confused mind will always say no. And a lot of people are really confused about inclusion. What is right? What is wrong? What if I say something that offends somebody? Maybe I should just ignore it and it'll go away. Is it somebody else's job to do? So it's okay to be confused, because this resource will help get rid of a lot of that confusion around inclusion. And we can't tell you everything about every special need or disability within this training, and you shouldn't need to know everything about every additional support need. The best thing that we can teach you through using this resource is that every person is exactly that they're a person. They're an individual with their own likes and dislikes, their own strengths, their own weaknesses, their own mind, their own opinions, and their own way of living their own life. So regardless of whether somebody has a special educational need or disability, if somebody does have an additional support need, don't look for what they can't do and make your own assumptions, because we're all guilty of doing that at times. But we must realize that we have to communicate with that person and find out what their needs are and actually how they want to be included and the preferences around inclusion as well. So find out what language they're comfortable with, find out if he or she would like any support. And remember that some people don't actually need any support. So we're seeing everybody's ability first and not necessarily their additional support need. So we work off the social model of disability, which recognises that although some individuals have physical and psychological differences which can affect their lives and that they need additional support for, it's actually our and society's reaction to these differences that actually leads to people being excluded because we're failing to meet their needs. So it's the barriers that we put up as a society that result in people being excluded. And through this resource, we're going to be able to help you to overcome some of those barriers, because there's a lot of tools in here that will enable you to be a more inclusive practitioner. So just a little background on where Top Sportsability has actually come from. So it's very, very evidence-based. Over the last, God, how many, 20, 30 years, there's been lots of research and feedback that's fed into this resource. So the original version was launched in 1998, and that was a very kind of practical, inclusive, adaptive equipment bag and training that went into schools. Then Sportsability 2 was launched in 2002, that worked upon the learnings from that, and this all evolved into what we currently have now, which is Top Sportsability, which is an online free resource. So in terms of background as well, why is it important that we have to look at including children with additional support needs, special education needs, disabilities? So just a little stat here for you. As of January 2018, nearly 15% of all pupils in schools in England have identified special educational needs or disabilities. So this is equating to well over 1 million pupils, and that's on the rise as well. So this graphic is really, really interesting, because I think sometimes when we hear special educational need and disability, and SEND as it's known in our education system, we think more along the lines of the disability element of it. But you'll see here that actually there's an awful lot that's covered within that spectrum of SEND. And one of the rising areas in this is down the middle of that graph. You see social, emotional, and mental health. So we're looking at we're working with the children that are just not getting access to meaningful PE and school sport. And this tool will help us to adapt all our practice to make sure that all the needs of all the young people here are met alongside their peers that maybe don't have any additional support needs. So Top Sportsability was developed to provide more opportunities for all young people, including those with special educational needs and disabilities. And one of the beauties of this resource is actually it's so inclusive that it's going to include your disengaged students as well. So even though it has a focus on including children with additional support needs, it is going to be able to extend your reach to children and young people that are maybe disengaged, or children and young people that maybe have English as a second language, or children and young people that just feel totally disengaged and uninterested with PE and school sport. It's a vehicle for integration, so it's a vehicle for integrating young people of all abilities into the one session, and it's an introduction to adapted and disability sport as well that can be fun and inclusive for everyone, not just children with additional support needs. So I always ask this question: what does meaningful PE and school sport look like for your young people, like all of your young people? And then thinking about your young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And we did a bit of research with the Youth Sport Trust a few years ago, and found that actually young people with special educational needs and disabilities wanted from PE and school sport the exact same as their peers that didn't have any additional support needs. They wanted to be around friends, they wanted to have fun, and they wanted to feel some sense of belonging and be able to succeed in some way. So that's really important to know, that when we talk about PE and school sport, meaningful is actually what's meaningful to those young people. How is it they want to be included? So I love this quote by Ken Black, who's an inclusion specialist, who says, in the case of disability, people are excluded not because of their impairments, but by the way in which society fails to meet their needs. Now, I don't believe anybody doesn't want to include people. I firmly believe that once you give people the tools to be able to include, anybody can be inclusive. And as a society, it's everybody's responsibility to be more inclusive and adaptive practitioners, because it's no one person's job, it's everybody's role. And and by being more inclusive for children with special education needs and disabilities, you just open up your sessions to all young people, to make sure that they're feeling that they can thrive and succeed within your sessions. So what does Top Sportsability actually contain? So later on, I'm actually going to jump onto the online resource and talk you through that in this training as well. So the Top Sportsability, as I said, it's an online resource. It's a free online resource as well. And it's for schools and offers practical advice to teachers, learning support staff, and other sports practitioners that work in and through your school as well. It consists of video clips and downloadable content showing ideas and strategies around inclusion of all young people with physical activity, and it's divided into 4 resources that I'll cover in a bit. Now, in terms of the videos and downloadable content, the video clips are all short and sweet and they really get to the point, but they're all downloadable, which I know personally from going into schools is really, really valuable, because we sometimes can't rely on the Wi-Fi and the internet connection. So the fact that you can actually download these clips make them really, really tangible tools. And you can see it. Sometimes seeing is believing, and actually seeing the clips give you a great scope for ideas and to actually fully understand what it is we're talking about when we're breaking down skills. The downloadable content as well are cards that I'll show you. You can print them off, you can laminate them. Everybody loves a nice laminating session, and they can be used within the sessions really, really easily. And all of our resources as well, I have to add, it is for schools and teachers and learning sports staff and other sports practitioners, but was also developed to enable young sports leaders to be able to help you lead your sessions as well. So they're very, very inclusive, and they're very, very easy to use. And they were tested extensively across mainstream and special educational needs schools as well, to make sure that they were practical and purpose driven. So using the program, here is the website that Top Sportsability will be on. It's topsportsability.co.uk. And to access this, I'll go through this step by step with you when I go online and show you. And you will need a lead inclusion code. So the Youth Sport Trust has a national network of absolutely fantastic Youth Sport Trust lead inclusion schools. So every county in England has a lead inclusion code for their county. And if you contact Youth Sport Trust or you contact that Youth Sport Trust lead inclusion school, they will give you this code. And that code will enable you to have full free access to these online resources. The code will always be YST Inclusion, all one word, all capitals, and then the number for your county. So I'll talk a little bit about that when we go on to the online resource as well. So using the actual program as well, the program can support in a number of different ways. So it can support you with curriculum support, out of hours school activities. It can be a vehicle for inclusion in schools and in the community in terms of physical activity and sport. It can be a basis of inclusive games festivals and give you really great ideas for doing that. And it can help as well to support competition. So there's quite a lot of links to the school games through this resource as well. And when I'm talking through the resource online, I'll show you how those links work, especially in some of the sports that are in the school games. And then there's links to the adaptations of those sports as well. So you're not just getting obviously fantastic physical education ideas, you're also getting physical activity ideas and school sport and competitive sport linked to the school games as well. So within the resource, I said there's 4 different types of resources. So we've got disability sports and adaptive games. These can be used not just for children with special education needs and disabilities, but for all young people. And when we do these sessions within PE, actually, they're really, really enjoyable for everybody to take part as well. We've got some Paralympic sports, we've got some tabletop games, we've got some inclusive court games, and we've got 2 adaptive games as well. And I'll show you in the resource actually that this is broken down into each of those sports or games or skills, and you're given videos and you're given really, really useful PDFs that you can print off that are activity cards that you can use when you're doing your sessions. We also have sports adaptations, and the 6 sports that we have currently are athletics and swimming, cricket, football, hockey, table tennis. And I think it's really important that we add as well that all of this resource over the years has been co-produced with national governing bodies of these sports. So the national governing bodies for all of these sports have worked really, really closely with Youth Sport Trust and some of the lead inclusion schools to develop these resources to make sure that they are adhering to all their kind of rules and regulations and policies and ethos as well. And with the disability sports and adaptive sports as well, they've been done with a lot of the national disability sports organisations. And yeah, it's just really, really valuable to know that, and that it's been funded a lot by the Department of Education, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport as well. So they're the 6 sports that we have on Top Sportsability, but we also have developed a new Limb Power resource that's really, really useful when you have any children who have amputations and especially have sports blades, and how teachers and school staff can include a child with a sports blade into their PE or their school sport. And then PMLD and complex needs, so profound and multiple learning disabilities and complex support needs. We've in the last few years been really developing this resource to make sure that children with very, very complex sport needs can be included in and through physical education and school sport through the school games. And that's done through the elements resource that's on there that was developed by the Youth Sport Trust. The elements are earth, wind and fire and water, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get onto the online resource, what that actually entails. And then the Special Olympics Great Britain Motor Activities Training Programme, known as MATP, which is very sports specific motor skills that young people and adults with complex sport needs can work on sports specific skills, and that is actually now an official school game sport as well. So you can see there's an absolute wealth of resource within the Top Sportsability online platform. So with the video clips, I'll go through that when I'm online with you, but they're really great because they introduce and they summarize, they show examples of adaptations, they show real life examples, and they also promote discussion as well. And they're just really, really a really useful tool to have, especially because they're downloadable as well. So when you're, you can use them in a class, but you can obviously use them yourself as a guidance tool. The downloadable material, then we've got lots of activity cards, case studies, real life examples of how people have implemented these, and then we've got sport specific inclusion spectrum and STEP examples as well. And they are the two inclusion models that we use throughout Top Sportsability, and I'll cover that a little bit when we go to the online resource. So with these models of inclusion, I would highly recommend that when you get access to your online resource, you go through these two models of inclusion first, just so you have the understanding, if you don't already, around the inclusion spectrum that was developed by Black and Stevenson, and also the STEP principle as well. A lot of people will have heard of the STEP principle. The inclusion spectrum, that provides coaches with a different coaches and teachers with different methods of supporting inclusion in and through PE and sport. And it's about delivering activities differently so we can balance different needs within a group and help to maximize potential for all people. So it's very much about integrated sessions so that everybody is getting a meaningful outcome from either your PE or your school sport session. So there's a little graphic of the inclusion spectrum and what that looks like. And I'll cover that a little bit in the online resource, but do have a look at this before you go through all the different content within Top Sportsability, because it's very useful to give you ideas actually of how you can include better and integrate better. And also all of the sports and the activity cards within Top Sportsability all have links to this inclusion spectrum. You'll see from your right hand side, the change to include modified has a branch of STEP, and a lot of people are aware of what STEP is. So STEP is another model of inclusion, and it's space, task, equipment, people. We teach this a lot in our inclusive practice and adaptive practice, and it's a really good go-to very quickly adaptation tool when you're running a session with a group of children or young people that have varying needs and ability levels. So if you're running a session, you can adapt the space to increase or decrease the size of the playing area or the distance between players to make it easier or harder. You can adapt the task, so breaking complex movements into smaller component parts to develop an understanding and the skill, the basic skill level. That can be progressed into a wider skill level as well. You can adapt the equipment, so sending or receiving the ball in different ways, using a shoot or gutter to send, and a catching mitt to receive maybe. And then adapting the people, so matching players of similar ability in small-sided games, or when we're using invasion games, maybe doing 4-2, 3-1. Yeah, so lots of different ways to adapt quickly. And the STEP principle is really, really easy to remember as well. And on all the activity cards, I will show you on the back of all of them, they all have that specific activity and ideas for how to adapt using that STEP principle. And the main thing to remember is STEP isn't there just to make things easier. STEP is there to make things harder for people who have grasped a skill, or easier for students who are still learning the skill as well. So if you want more information on any of the resources, here is the contact details for Roshni in the Youth Sport Trust, who will be able to give you the Youth Sport Trust Lead Inclusion School code for your county if you need that, or give you more information on the resource if you have any other additional questions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on to the online resource and actually talk you through how you register and then how you log on, and then show you in real time on this training how you can get through and navigate through the resource to use it to its best ability. So this is the online resource. So when you go to topsportsability.co.uk, so I've obviously logged in, like I'm able to log in already, but I'm going to take you to the registration page. So this is your landing site that you'll come to. There's a video there that gives you a really great example of like just an introduction to what I've been talking about. If you go down, you've got log into your account, but if you go down a little bit further, need to register, and we're going to click on that and I'm going to show you. So here is your registration page. You put in your name, your surname, your school or your organization, your job title, your lead inclusion code. So this is the really important one because you're going to put in youth sport, YST, inclusion, and whatever code you need for your county code. So it's all one word, YST, inclusion, all capital letters, and then the number that equates to the county that you're in. You put in your postcode, your email address, your password, you come up with your own password. Then when you've got your registration, you can log in. So I will sign in here. Now I've got access to the resource, and this is absolutely free access as well. So you're on your landing page. If you go down, it tells you a little bit more about what I've been talking about and talks about exploring the resource as well. So here are the sections. So the sections are, if you scroll down, you've got the sections, and then on this drop down, you've got the sections as well. So I would say when you enter this resource, the best thing to do is go to the user manual first and have a look at maybe those brief videos and that introduce what the resource is all about, but also what I was talking about in terms of the inclusion spectrum and STEP. That's a little bit more detail about that there, and it's good to have an understanding of the basics of those two models because they are the golden threads that run through all of these sports and activities. So it's good to have a grasp of those. So in terms of resources, we've got the disability sports that I talked about. There's a video that introduces this part of the resource and its aims. And then if you look down to discover, you've got bocce, palibot, t-ball, goalball, table cricket, inclusive zone volleyball, volleyball, sitting volleyball, beanbag games, new age curling. So there's lots of different resources in that. There's lots of different links as well. And these links will link you to all the resources for Bocce England, Goalball UK, and all the different organisations that have worked in partnership with Youth Sport Trust to deliver this, and for the school games as well. So you'll have all your links to school games resources as well within those links. So if we just go to one of the most popular ones when I do practical training is people want to learn a little bit more about goalball or sitting volleyball. But goalball, if we just click on that, you'll see it was done in partnership with Goalball UK, and it has the introduction to what goalball is all about. And really brilliant is that it's got equipment sections as well. So it talks about the equipment that you use. One of the best things we've found in this section is some people that maybe don't have adapted equipment, so they might not have a ball with a bell in it. This gives actually really good ideas of how to make one yourself. Or one of the things is a sound ball can be improvised by wrapping a plastic bag around a football or basketball, because it crackles when the ball is rolled, and it just gives people that, like, you know, instant access to being able to adapt their equipment, because every school has some type of football or basketball or netball, and actually just putting the plastic bag around it can actually make it more adaptable, especially when you're using goalball. There's the rules in the scoring system, number of players, the playing area, variations of it as well. And if you go down, all the resources, all the sports have documents attached to them. So introduction to goalball, goalball in terms of the inclusion spectrum, and goalball related to the STEP process as well. And then if you click on the resources, it gives you goalball basics, the circle ball, and lots of different ways that you can run sessions related to goalball. If I click on one of those, you'll see it downloads, and you'll see here, this is the circle ball game that you can play to introduce people to goalball. It gives you a little overview of what it is, what you need, how to play, some things you can think about, and then on the back of the card you've got that step model and how to modify and adapt the game as well. So you've got your space, your task, your equipment, your people, some safety kind of pointers as well as extension games as well for it, and how to improve integrity, and then the links to Goalball UK for further resource. So you can see how you can print this off, laminate it, and it becomes a really great tool to be able to use within your session, whether that's in PE or school sport. So that's Goalball. If I go back to the resources, so that's disability sport, and I can go back to, let's see, sports adaptations. So sports adaptations, you've got your video again that introduces you to all of what this resource section is all about. And here's your different sports. So athletics, cricket, football, swimming, limb power, tennis, hockey, golf, table tennis. You've got all your links there that bring you to the national government bodies and the school games links as well, which is fantastic. And if we go on to athletics, for example, you'll see everything has been co-produced. This was co-produced with England Athletics, and gives you your introduction to adaptive athletics and how to adapt athletics, running and movement games, jumping games, and every section you go into has its own video and its own resource card as well, which is really, really useful. You'll see here athletics, you've got your documents related to that, introducing athletics and adaptive athletics, the inclusion spectrum related to athletics, using STEP related to athletics as well. If we go on to the resources, you'll see the activity and skill-specific games and sessions that you can do as well. And like that, you can print that off and laminate it. And it's the same kind of premise, what you need, how to play, some things you can think about, and on the back you've got that step model to modify, and yeah, and then your extension game as well. So that's a little bit about the sports adaptations. We also have wheelchair skills, which is really, really valuable. And this is a great resource that gives you tips on setting up your sports wheelchair, basic wheelchair movement skills, and how the skills can be transferred across a range of different sports-specific wheelchair-based activities as well. So this was done in partnership with Wheel Power and using their ABCs concept as well. And it's a really, really kind of a powerful tool to be able to give you those basics of agility, balance and coordination, and sports wheelchair skills and sports as well. And on that, you've got your basic skills, you've got your sports specific skills, you've got your power chair skills as well. And you'll see when you click into the resource, there is just an absolute wealth of further resource in terms of videos, and again, your resource cards and your documentation as well linked to that. So really, really invaluable resources on this platform. Then elements is the profound and multiple and complex needs section. So children with very, very complex needs have for a long time not been included meaningfully in physical education and school sport. And this resource is giving an incredible way to integrate and include young people with very, very complex sport needs into PE and school sport. So you'll see here, this is the Elements program that was developed by the Youth Sport Trust. And that covers earth, water, air, and fire. So game-based activities, water-based and exploration, outdoor adventure, and dance and movement-based activities as well. You'll have your introducing elements, your inclusion spectrum related to it, and using the STEP model. And then each of those sections is broken down into its own subsection. And you'll see here, this is the game-based activities with earth. And if I go to the air one, the outdoor activities, you'll see there's some fantastic videos as well about bringing the outdoors inside and going outdoors and looking at kind of the sensory feedback that you get in relation to that and the skills that you can develop. And like that, it has its own videos and it has its own resources as well. One of the great things about this element section is that in the sensory and movement program section, there's multi-sensory environment training as well, which is great about kind of tactile, verbal, oral, and oral pathways in young people who have profound and complex needs, and those multi-sensory environments that can be created to actually enable people to move more. And then the Special Olympics Motor Activities Training Programme, we've got a whole section on that, and that's now an official school games sport. So that gives you an introduction to what it's all about. Again, you've got your videos, you've got your cards, and you've got your links to further resources related to that. There's also a section on equipment. If you want to purchase some adaptive equipment, you can as well. And doing it through this Top Sportsability website will give you access to some of that. But what's great is that the resource lends itself to teaching you how to adapt your equipment yourself as well. So that is just a quick overview of the Top Sportsability online resource. I hope that's been really helpful for you. Get on, get your access, and just explore it and find out which resources will really work for you, whether you're working in PE or school sport or physical activity. It's going to give you really, really great tools to be able to adapt your practice and be a more inclusive practitioner. So thank you very much for listening and watching. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact the Youth Sport Trust, who will be more than happy to answer any of your questions related to this fantastic Top Sportsability online resource. Thanks a million.